Hi, my name is Noel Davis and I'm here with Vermicomposting, and I'm going to show you how to create a brand new bin from scratch. Now I have all the supplies I need here. I'm going to go through them, and not all of this is necessary, but I found that this is the best way to make a bin for me. So if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments and let's get started. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to show you here is shredded newspaper. This is something I run just regular newspaper through a shredder. I don't typically use paper that you'd use in an office because I think that they can use bleach. I also found that it takes a lot more time for that to break down. This tends to go a lot quicker. So that's one of the first things that I always put in my bins, along with one other thing here. This is the empty bin, or the bin that I'm going to reuse. It was filled up and I needed to empty it. I did, and took out all the worms, and it's kind of been sitting for a while. I use these toilet paper rolls. I jam some rolls in the toilet paper, so I take them and I crunch them up like this and just ram them right in there. I usually do quite a few of these. I don't have as many this time, but that's what's going to start in my bin. So these add kind of some support. They can support some weight to kind of keep everything off the ground. After that, I'm going to put paper in. And that's where I was saying this is one of those key things. I like to put paper in. It absorbs moisture really well, and it tends to be very good in the bins. The worms tend to like it. And I'm just going to add a small layer down in here, just to kind of enough to cover the bottom. See, it's only about maybe an inch deep. You know, it basically goes up to the top of the toilet paper rolls. After that, I'm going to add in another very important thing: cardboard. These are cut up into small squares. I use a utility knife to just cut this up, and I'm just going to pour in a bunch of it right now. It's a variety of sizes. Worms tend to love cardboard. Actually, this one's a little bit big, but anyhow. So then we're going to move that around, and that's just going to create a little layer over everything else that's there. Now, the next thing I'm going to put in, and this is not necessary, but I have found it to be very helpful, is burlap. This is actually two pieces of burlap. They're kind of layered over each other, but I'm just going to kind of lay this down in here and squish it down into the bin. I have found that the worms absolutely love burlap. I've heard great things about it, and while I haven't really kept track of it, it seems to be working really well in some of my other bins, especially as a cover to kind of keep everything contained. Now from there, I'm going to add in, which I'll show you how I do this in another video, is I have pre-ground up frozen food. This is all cucumbers and stuff that was frozen, and I'm going to add that right on top of the burlap. So right like that, get it all out of there. And this was previously frozen, so this is pretty cold here, but let me get all that out. And I actually had a little bit left in the lid here. I'm going to put that in there too. See, a little bit left in the lid, so I'm going to get all this stuff out. And this is ground up, so it's nice and small. It's frozen now, but it's already starting to thaw very quickly because it's so small now. It's basically ice slivers that are in there. A little bit off this tapper. All right. Now, spread that out a little bit. Make sure it's nice and even, kind of coated a little bit. And there's some chunks in there. I mean, that's a decent sized chunk, but this stuff is going to, as you can tell, it's sticking to my fingers here. It's really fine. It's really cold. I'm going to just wipe my fingers off on the burlap here, try to clean them off a little bit because it's really cold. Wow. Now, here's the other thing. This is coffee grounds. Now, I get these when I make coffee. I just save the grounds. I kind of let them dry out. There's a little bit of mold in there even, so they've already started to break down a little bit because I've had them for a while. I'm just going to sprinkle that on top of here. The filters and all. Maybe move them around just a little bit here just to make sure everything gets mixed around. And then this is the last thing I'm going to put on for food. And I showed this in a prior video, but these are my pulverized eggshells. So I'm just going to sprinkle those all over this top here. And I think I mentioned before, but there's a little bit of dust coming off. You don't want to inhale the dust, apparently, from what I've read. I've heard that that's really bad for you. So I'm just going to sprinkle it on there. Tap it down. A little bit of dust coming off, but not much. I'm going to put down a little bit more paper now on top of this. Now, a lot of people are going to tell you, oh, you need to add a lot of water, add a lot of water, add a lot of water. I don't add water. And I don't for two reasons. One, This bin is plastic. Plastic, water's gonna just find its way in here with the food that I'm putting in, and it's not gonna be an issue at all. There's just gonna be so much moisture in here, it's not even gonna be funny. There's gonna be a lot. So I don't feel it's necessary, because every time I add food, I'm gonna add moisture to the bin. Almost all of my bins eventually end up waterlogged because of that. And I don't have any drainage holes on the bottom. The only holes here on this bin are on the side. And I just used a 3/4 inch bit, I think, or a 1/4 inch bit, and made these holes on the side. These are the only holes. I go all the way around the bin, only holes in the entire bin. I don't put any in the lid anymore, because what happens is if you put anything on top of it, they get waterlogged and the water starts clogging all those holes, unless you make them really big. So I found this is to be the best solution. I just run multiple bins and I empty them out as they get full. And that way I can consistently maintain everything. Now the last thing, or the last two things I should say I'm gonna add, is one more piece of burlap. But before I do that, I need to add something really important here. I need to add the worms. So I've got another bin back here, and as you can tell, this one is pretty full. It's the same design as this one. It's really well composted. I mean, just look at this. This is all flaky compost, but there's a ton of worms right here. I kind of fed them very heavily in this area, and I'm just gonna put that right in the middle. Now, obviously when you buy worms, they're not gonna come like this with all this living material on there, but this is a lot of living material. It's gonna just jumpstart this bin. The worms in here, they're gonna jumpstart it as well, but this is the way I do it. Is I take them from one of my prior bins. It's working really well at processing food, and I just sort of spread them in there. And you can see, look at all these worms right here. You can see there's a ton of worms in this processed material. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna let them sit. So what I'm gonna do, take this piece of burlap. Let's see if I can get all this stuff off my hands first. I usually wear gloves, by the way, when I do this. I forgot my gloves today, but normally I'd wear gloves. And the reason why is that way I don't have this stuff sticking to my fingers quite like this. That way it just kind of runs off and goes right into the bin. So I'm gonna just use this piece of burlap here, so I'm gonna throw another one on. I'm gonna use this to kind of get everything off my fingers, because I got a bunch of worms on my fingers too. Now this is, as I said, this bin is fairly dry, but I'm just gonna throw this on top in just kind of all different directions. And this is gonna be the top of your bin. This kind of protects everything, kind of this will get wet as moisture builds up, which is going to happen. As I said, this is all my food was frozen. It's all got moisture all throughout it. It's just going to eventually waterlog the bin. In fact, if I tilt this bin up, this is really moist. I don't know if you can see here in the bottom, but this is really too moist in the bottom. I'm gonna throw these in there as well. So there's way too much moisture in my bins as it is, so I don't need any more moisture. So, but that is how I create a worm bin. Now, if you're getting worms in the mail, because I do ship, and I know other people are gonna watch these videos probably, you're getting worms in the mail, do this a week before. You don't have to chop up your food and everything. You don't have to have the eggshells. You don't have to have a lot of this stuff. You need paper or newspaper. You need the newspaper or cardboard for bedding. The burlap is helpful, but not necessary. The food should also go in there, but does not have to be chopped up. You could throw in full banana peels. You could throw in full food. You could throw in, I've thrown in corn on the cob, which is going to be one of my future videos. I was shocked. I threw in corn on the cob. The worms love it. They absolutely love it. And I will be showing that in one of my future videos. So don't get too caught up in what you're putting in. Don't put in a whole lot either, though, because you want to let it sit for a week, so that way you can start building up these natural materials that are then going to help the worms break down this food. But you need to give it some time to do that before you get your worms. If you get them last minute, you might need to put a light in here just to make sure the worms stay in. I have found that with this type of setup, all I need to do is put the cover on like this, let it sit for a while, and then nature will take care of itself. This is now a done bin. I will let it sit probably for 2 weeks, and then I'll start kind of poking around to check on it, and then probably add food. So that's the process for making a new bin. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you enjoyed making compost with your worms.